This 2-minute pitch is on informed consent.
Our argument is based on the case where an older woman with multiple sclerosis is hospitalized. Her doctors feel she should be placed on a feeding tube. In order to do that, they must get her consent. In the morning, when they ask her, she agrees to the tube. However, in the evening, she becomes disoriented and refuses the feeding tube. The next morning, she doesn't remember her state of mind the previous night and then agrees to the tube. Our position on the case is the doctor should place the feeding tube into the woman. Here is the first half of our argument on why the doctor should place the feeding tube. Here is the rest of our argument. I know it's a lot, but don't worry, we're going to break it down.
To start with, we're going to go over the conditions for informed consent, which are the patient is competent, adequate information is disclosed to the patient understands the information, the patient decides freely, and the patient consents to the treatment. Each of these examples are shown in this case. The woman is competent because she is lucid when she agrees to the treatment. She is not disoriented or confused when she gives consent to have the feeding tube placed. She receives enough information about her case from her doctor to be able to make a decision. The woman also understands the information that she is given. The woman is not coerced or swayed in any direction by the doctor or anyone else, which means she decided freely, and the woman gives her consent to have the feeding tube placed. Because of all of that, informed consent has been met. Therefore, the doctor should respect her autonomy and the decision she has made and put the feeding tube into place.
Doctors have a duty of beneficence, which state they should do good to others. Non-maleficence asks us not to intentionally or unintentionally inflict harm on someone. If she doesn't receive the feeding tube, the doctors would be going against these principles. The woman wouldn't receive adequate nutrition to stay alive. Not placing the tube would go against the doctor's duty of non-maleficence. It would be the doctor's duty to do the most good and the least amount of harm to the patient, which requires them to put the feeding tube in.
According to Dworkin, paternalism is sometimes justifiable if the decision is made to protect the patient. The feeding tube is necessary for the woman to get adequate nutrition. Therefore, placing the feeding tube would be in her best interest. Because of this, even when the woman becomes disoriented in the evening and refuses the feeding tube, the doctors have the right to go against what she is saying and place the feeding tube anyway.
Act utilitarianism states that you should make the decision that will bring about the most happiness for as many people possible. This proves that giving the woman the feeding tube would make sure she gets enough nutrients, and it would be good for her family that she is being kept alive. It would bring about the greatest good for the doctor and his future patients as well, not doing any patients harm. The decision is to place the feeding tube in all cases like this would generate the most good for the greatest number of people. The doctor should follow the greatest good principle and give the woman the feeding tube.
Because of all the reasons we have previously talked about, such as the conditions for informed consent, the doctor's duty of beneficence and non-maleficence, the greatest good principle, and weak paternalism, the physician should heed to the consent given by the woman to place the feeding tube.